build this new one, the One and All, which is their sort of main sail training vessel.
And what's this one used for now?
This one, well, Sir James Hardy, I was speaking to him about it, and he would like to see her used as a floating classroom, so that school children would go and sit on the Fairlie, do their lessons, and just travel around as they were having a lesson. Sounds a pretty nice way to go to school.
That's a great way to go to school.
Yes.
You can see it there as the Dar Młodzieży comes up to the, well, we lost it there, but coming up to the bridge, just the reason why they had to wait for low tide for the tallest of these tall ships to get under the bridge. There really isn't much room to move there. They're 45 to 50 foot, rather metre up the mast, the main masts.
I think they were our Young Endeavour people up the mast, or our Lewin dancers, I'm not quite sure which ones.
It's hard to tell. With 200 of them, it's Hobson's choice a bit, but obviously with the bigger ones like that Polish one.
She's a fully rigged ship, which means she has 3 masts. She has all the square sails on each of the masts. There's a square sail.
Hang on, that's not a barkentine or a brigantine or a brig or a bark. That's a fully rigged ship, is it?
Well, I'm a little bit confused about this because a fully rigged ship has 3 masts and the brigantine has 3 masts. So fully rigged, I think, because she has squares on each mast. It's been interesting trying to learn what they all mean.
Here we go. We're on board. We were on board the Dar. That, in fact, is a shot of the Opera House from one of our cameras on board the Dar Młodzieży, which is.
The captain of the first fleet of the Soren Larsen told me, "Now you get it right. It's 5. She crosses 5 yards. If there's 5 yards down the mast, she crosses 5 yards." So there you go.
Oh gosh, I'm sure they're checking you out too, Janine, on that. We've got 2 or 3 cameras on board that boat, and of course Bruce Stannard and Karl Kuzelnicki, who are going to be sailing out. I'm not sure how they're going to get back tonight. They're going out through the heads with some of our crews. There are the handsome boys, Janine.
Yes,
you were talking about those young men.
And hopefully they're in readiness to go up the top of the mast ray, probably as they go under, I'm sure they are. See, they've got all their harnesses on. What a wonderful shot. They're just all ready to hook up as they climb. It's like climbing Mount Everest, I think. You just keep going up and up and up those ratlins until you get to the designated position.
Joanne Zawicki, the producer who was with you on that particular one, is looking very affectionately at those young men on board the Polish boat.
Hamish is a bit of a movie star, I think. He's rather gorgeous. But once they get under the bridge, you'll see all these white suits going up the ratlins up to the different positions on the mast, and then she'll be fully dressed.
All right. Well, let's take a break. We are going to wait. All right. We're going to try and establish our link there with Bruce Stannard. It's very difficult with all these masts and all the machinery around today, plus of course the bridge, to try and get we've got some pictures there of course, but to try and get connection with our men on board there.
He's a wonderful man, this captain, Lester Victorich, who's been captain for quite a long time aboard the Dar. He's had a lot of receptions on this aft deck of the Dar Młodzieży in each port, and had many guests, and so people have been impressed by his sense of humour as he's given away gifts and received them. He's been a bit of a favourite, Captain Victorich of the Dar Młodzieży.
He'd be regarded very much as a Polish diplomat, wouldn't he, at a job like this? It's
absolutely.
It's so much public relations apart from a training vessel.
I think so. In fact, when Australia won the America's Cup, the American ambassador said, "You've done more for Australia in a few months than we've been able to do in 20 years in American diplomacy." And I think something like this, which it's very sort of friendly and relaxed, it really does a lot for the country's
wonderful
image.
shot then, as it's very hard with the cameras of course to get a real impression, but as she sneaks away under the bridge there with all those cars
to spare, I think.
Oblivious to what this beautiful creature that's going underneath them. The bridge tonight will be closed for that period of time, and it's of course low tide, the only reason you can get through there, but it'll be closed tonight to traffic at around 9 o'clock. I think from about 8:30 till 9:30 they're closing the bridge because of the fireworks that are going to be let off.
That last picture we saw, Ray, was the Shabab Oman, and she's owned by the Sultan of Oman, and all her crew no, she does have some British officers aboard as well, I'm sorry, but she, the Sultan's Navy, there's only 1 million people in the Sultanate of Oman, but they wear these, what's called a dish dash, which is like a flowing white robe, and little round blue hats, and they look rather special.
It was, of course, only in 1932 when Bradfield, the engineer, completed the Sydney Harbour Bridge that the tall ships had to worry about that, at low tides and high tides. They just went around to and picked up their cargoes around there and delivered cargoes and came under there, but it would have been no trouble at all. There you go, there's a lot of activity on board the Dar Młodzieży. Hard work. It's
a bit of a wait. I suppose they've been very patient, haven't they? But still, they're saying goodbye to Sydney, which is a sad thing for them, I'm sure.
Do you know where they're going from here? Are they going home or going?
I'm not positive. I believe they're going up to Brisbane, and then they'll continue their world tour. Yes. So,
beautiful shot. Now, as you say, they'd been motoring there. The instruction was to try and keep it down to 4 knots, and they'd normally do 6 knots under motoring. But I'm sure they'd like to hoist those sails and get underway. Yes.
Doesn't she look magnificent when she's
all right, let's take a break now, and with those beautiful shots, we'll come back in just one moment with, hopefully we'll get to talk to Bruce Stannard and Carl on board that boat. We're back live again. On board we just were back live with the Dar Młodzieży, the Polish training boat with those young cadets on board, just having gone under the Sydney Harbour Bridge and on its way out towards the Sydney Heads. Pretty much rounding up the parade of sail. That's towards the end of the 200 tall ships that have been involved in this wonderful parade today, and we're still hopeful of crossing to our men on board before they actually go to sea, Bruce Stannard and Karl Kuzelnicki. But a lovely sight as she dips out. I think she's about the last of the really tall ones, Janine.
Yes, and probably the most majestic looking. I think maybe if people will be looking over past their heads as she turns, we may see her set up most of her sails, but going against the breeze on Sydney Harbour, it's a shame we won't see that.
And she passes Sydney Cove now, which again we keep seeing, and Bennelong Point where the Opera House is, which again was the start, the reason for today really, the start 200 years ago on this day, 1788, and saying farewell to Sydney this time.
It's a sad day for all the trainees who were chosen to represent Australia on these yachts, because they virtually get off the boat and say goodbye, and then life has to start again. Some have jobs and college to go to, but others really have to go and look for a job and start their lives. So it's having been in such a rigorous routine, 4 hours on, 8 hours off, 4 hours on, 8 hours off for 6 months. Suddenly they're free and their time is free. So I know the feeling after the America's Cup, you know, suddenly you've got some time.
And especially the ease with which they travel around the world on that boat, then to be restricted back in Poland and not having the access for travel that they have. How many cadets on board that?
Well, she's got about 130. Sorry, no, that's not right. She'd have about...
all these trick questions.
Where are we? Trick questions. 90 trainees.
90 trainees.
Sorry, yes. The Nippon Maru has more.
You're forgiven. With 200 of these tall ships, you're forgiven that. There's another lovely shot. Now, Geraldine, you've just while we look at that, you came through the Heads and into that wonderful Sydney Harbour.
I did indeed.
1 or 2 years ago?
Yes, 17 years ago. I sailed through the Heads. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I saw the harbour bridge. Hogues would have been on the harbour bridge still then. And I sailed past the Opera House, and I really did think it looked like a whole lot of nuns in a scrum. Mind you, when I got to Circular Quay, I got a bit worried because it was square. And Australia Square was round. But like many migrants...
Sounds Irish, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, indeed. But like many migrants before and after me, I thought Sydney was just the best place in the whole world, and I still do. That's why I'm still here.
Well, what about, we haven't spoken to you for a couple of hours. I mean, what about sitting there today watching this? Is a lump in the throat like the rest of us?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when Thomas Keneally said today, we love this country so much after 200 years, imagine how the people who've been here 40,000 years feel. Tear to my eye then.
Yes, some good stuff. You've got a song for us, a couple of little ditties?
I sure do, a couple of little ditties to keep drinking to.
We'll show them some lovely photos, lovely pictures you sing along.
Okay, all right, Don, here we go. Oh, with me toodle-oodle-la, and me toodle-oodle-la-dee. When me toodle-oodle-la, and me toodle-oodle-la-dee. Come sing bell and bow, unto me pay attention. Don't ever fall in love, it's the devil's own invention. Sure, once I fell in love with a maiden so bewitching, Miss Henrietta Bell out to Captain Kelly's kitchen. With me toodle-oodle-la, and me toodle-oodle-la-dee. With me toodle-oodle-la, and me toodle-oodle-la-dee. Oh, let him go, let him tarry, let him sink or let him swim. Oh, he doesn't care for me and I don't care for him. Let him go get another that I hope he will enjoy. 'Cause I'm going to marry a far nicer boy. He can go to his old mother now and set her mind at ease. I hear she is an old hag, very hard to please. It's like me and talking ill is what she's always done. Because I've been a courting her great big ugly son. So let him go, let him tarry, let him sink or let him swim. Oh, he doesn't care for me and I don't care for him. Let him go get another that I hope he will enjoy. 'Cause I'm going to marry a far nicer boy. Hello, Patsy Fagan, you can hear the girls all cry. Hello, Patsy Fagan, you're the apple of my eye. You're a decent boy from Ireland, and no one can deny. You're airum, tearum, divil may care'um, decent Irish boy. I'm over here in Sydney, I've got a decent job. I'm carrying bricks and mortar, and me pay is 15 bob. I get up in the morning, I rise up with the lark. And as I'm walking down the street, you can hear the girls remark, hello, Patsy Fagan, you can hear the girls all cry. Hello, Patsy Fagan, you're the apple of me eye. You're a decent boy from Ireland, and no one can deny. You're airum, tearum, divil may care'um, decent Irish boy. You're a airum, tearum, divil may care'um, decent Irish boy. Whee!
Good on you, Geraldine.
Thank you. I wouldn't mind some of those decent boys hanging out of that rigging up there. Weren't they fantastic?
And lots of decent girls hanging off the shore as well.
Oh, I'm sure there are. That's amazing, that Japanese ship. I thought the Japanese miniaturized everything.
Let's go across to John Michael House on board the Mustique.
Well, the cadets on the ships, the trainees on the ships have been waving Sydney goodbye, and Sydney, with a lot of emotion, have been waving goodbye to them. It's been a spectacular day, a day none of us will forget, and I must say that seeing these ships going away, you feel a sense of loss in a funny way. It's like something very special is over. But from up here, we've had the best view. As I said at the beginning of the show this morning, we'd won the lotto when it came to views, and what a view we've had. We've seen everything here, and I must say the ingenuity of people, not only people in regular boats, but people going around in funny little floaty things they've made out of tins and rafts. I don't think a lot of the safety regulations have been obeyed today, but I don't think anything untoward has happened, and it's been a wonderful family day. People waving to each other, talking to each other from boat to boat. It's been terrific. So from the beautiful Mustique out here in Sydney Harbour,
once a jolly swagman, camped down by Billabong, under the shade of a coolabah tree. And he sang as he watched, and he waited till his billy boiled. He sang, "Will you come a waltzing, Matilda, with me?" Now down came the jumbuck to drink out of the billabong, and up jumped the swagman and grabbed him with glee. And he sang as he shoved that jumbuck in his tucker bag. He sang, "Will you come a waltzing, Matilda, with me?" Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, will you come a waltzing Matilda with me? And he sang as he shoved that jumbuck in his tucker bag. He sang, "Will you come a waltzing Matilda with me?" Up rode the squatter, mounted on his thoroughbred, and up jumped the troopers, 1, 2, and 3. They said, "Who's that jolly jumbuck you got in your tucker bag?" They said, "Boy, will you come a waltzing Matilda with me?" Waltzing Matilda, Lord, waltzing Matilda, will you come a waltzing Matilda with me? They said, "Who's that jolly jumbuck you got in your tucker bag?" They said, "Will you come a waltzing Matilda with me?" Up jumped the swagman and he ran into the billabong. "Well, you'll never take me alive," said he. And his ghost, it may be heard as you pass round by the billabong, just singing, "Will you come a waltzing Matilda with me?" Waltzing Matilda, Lord, waltzing Matilda, will you come a waltzing Matilda with me? And his ghost, it may be heard as you pass round by the billabong, singing, "Will you come a waltzing Matilda with me?" And his ghost, it may be heard as you pass round by the billabong, to singing, "You come a waltzing Matilda with me." Yeah, Lord, will you come a waltzing Matilda with me?
Live pictures from the airship of Sydney Cove, the initial spot 200 years ago where the tank stream was and where the first settlers, the first white settlers in this country arrived and made their camp. Welcome back and happy birthday Australia wherever you may be over this wonderful continent of ours. That's live footage once again from Sydney Harbour. Just a shot of the tall ships now which have assembled and are getting ready to have to go up under the bridge and get themselves ready for what will be the parade of sail in front of Prince Charles and Princess Diana later this afternoon. Starting about 4 o'clock. It'll take these tall ships, all 200 of them, about 2 hours to get down under the bridge and out towards the heads. We'll be covering all of that live this afternoon for you, and we'll be covering anything else that happens on this celebration day, January the 22nd. More wonderful pictures to come, as I say, later in the afternoon. It's we'll be on board the Dar Młodzieży, whichever pronunciation you like of that, the Polish boat that is the second tallest of the tall ships out there, and our second biggest. It just squeezes under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It can only do it at low tide, one of the reasons why they're so late in the day coming out there. We'll have Bruce Stannard and Carl Krusnitsky on board that boat. We'll certainly bring you all the angles and all the pictures and all the action, everything that's happening there of what should be a glorious sight in the late afternoon. Of course, tonight at 9 o'clock we have the fireworks, the $200,000 plus firework display that'll again centre around Sydney Cove and around the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Just part of what's to come for you. As well as that, we'll have an afternoon of Australian music. We'll bring you these wonderful pictures. They are wonderful pictures, aren't they? We'll bring you those pictures and lots more, even pictures of boats as well in the harbour this afternoon with some of the music that we've had over the last couple of years on the midday show. And we'll have a break now. We'll come back with more of that. Certainly Australia Live there this afternoon. Sydney Harbour at coming up to 1:45 Sydney time, 1:45 in the afternoon, and the boats won't go away today.
No, they won't. It looks like a big lunchtime on Sydney Harbour.
The Eagle, it seemed that, of course, every time the boys were rounding one of those markers, there was the Eagle off to one side.
I fondly remember seeing the Eagle there. In fact, I spoke to the captain, Ernst Cummings, and he was there the day we won the America's Cup, and he said he was really helping us just as much as he was helping America, so he's here. But,
you mentioned the fact that the First Fleet are going to the other cities and the other ports of Australia, so that while this is obviously based in Sydney today for January 26th reasons, the rest of Australia will get to know them. It means sailing in conditions that they sailed in 1788, doesn't it?
Yes, it's hard to imagine just being on a lovely flat bay today, or a harbour today like this, that people could actually be standing up at the top of these yards in gale force conditions, and we do have some footage of what it really can be like, Ray, and it's just phenomenally scary. And it's a little bit like, this is from 1920, the 1920s. A man actually took himself up these yards and took just some phenomenal film.
This is around Cape Horn, isn't it, where the clippers used to go? They'd come into Sydney and get their wool, and then they'd head towards South America.
That's right, and they were fast and they were sleek and the real merchant vessels of the day. But imagine just getting up there in those wild conditions.
Now, conditions like this, the other side of the globe, of course, but around the Cape of Good Hope, when we lost one of the sailors on the
yes, from the Anna Christina, a man was lost overboard in these sort of conditions. So you imagine that once he'd gone overboard, it would be almost impossible to spot him. He really would have been frozen and drowned quickly. And it's interesting what Dick Smith was saying, that you do need a little bit of danger to develop character in our trainees, and I don't think they'll ever go through anything like this on the Young Endeavour, but really just that sense of a slight bit of danger means you have to overcome that first little bit of fear. and that's important.
We'll probably talk more when we come to the tall ships later in the afternoon, but there was that famous story, one of the legendary skippers of the Marco Polo, I think it was, one of the great clippers in the wool trade in Australia, and legend had it that he used to actually lock the sails so that they couldn't unfurl the sails in these bad winds, and he'd stand on the poop deck with cocked pistols to make sure that none of the sailors tried to let some of the sails down in these conditions, getting ready for the parade of tall ships as they come back later in the afternoon.
That'll be another massive manoeuvre to get a whole line of, a snake-like line of 200 yachts all ready to parade under the bridge.
Aren't they lovely shots? Now you spoke with the surgeon.
I spoke with the surgeon who went on the flagship, the Soren Larsen, and he was super impressed with the way all the trainees and the crew got together, and it's been a memorable time for him.
Now we've got Bruce Stannard and Karl Krasnitsky on there. We'll be crossing to them a little later. It's a bit difficult to make contact with them currently in the crowded harbour. Yes. And while they're moving at the moment.
Right. I'll tell you who's going to be up the very top in the main oil of that is one Australian will be up the very top, and another will be just a little bit lower down on another yard.
And that's
there
about
are 2 Australian trainees.
50 metres up?
Yes, exactly.
150 feet up.
So they will be getting the best view of all, I'd say. Almost touch the harbour bridge from there, couldn't you?
All right, they will almost touch the harbour bridge too. You're live. We are staying live all afternoon, but I hope you're enjoying the
It's always been you. It'll always be you.
The largest of the tall ships, Dar Młodzieży from Poland, has been off the coast of Fremantle since Monday, waiting for the rest of the tall ship fleet to arrive. The last port of call for the three-masted, fully rigged ship was Mauritius, and when we caught up with the Dar, they were happy to see a new face. But as they sailed into Fremantle Harbour, leading the tall ship's fleet, there was just a sea of faces. Not since the America's Cup in February of this year has Fremantle played host to so many people. And waiting in that crowd was a very excited mum. Hazel Mackey last saw her 19-year-old son 3 months ago when he flew to Poland to join up with Dar Młodzieży. For Hamish, it's been a long journey.
It's only been 3 months, but it's been a long 3 months for me.
What's happened in the 3 months?
Oh, a lot of seas passed under, a lot of sails torn, a lot of excitement on too, I think.
It's been worth it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for a welcome like this, it's definitely worth it.
Also on board, another Australian, Andrew Koleski from Melbourne.
There was one really exciting time. At 3 o'clock in the morning, there was an alarm when we were carrying full sail, and the force 9 squall came through. The boat was heeling at about 30 degrees, and there were just people everywhere and cries and shouts, and we got it under control without any problems. All blokes on board, was it? All blokes on board, unfortunately, yes.
These tall ships will be berthed at Fremantle until Saturday, when they'll set sail bound for Sydney in time for Australia's 200th birthday on January 26th next year.
To reach Fremantle on December 8th. At least 2 of her crew know Australia very well.
The Polish seaport of Gdynia, the home for 2 of the world's largest square-rigged sailing ships. Dar Młodzieży, now retired, a veteran of 50 years' service, and her successor, Dar Młodzieży, the Merchant Marine Academy of Poland's magnificent new sail training ship. Completed and delivered to the Russians. 4 more will be built for that country's sail training program. Dar Młodzieży preparing for the longest voyage ever undertaken by a Polish sail training vessel. To Australia via the Cape of Good Hope, back to Poland via Cape Horn. There's a crew of 47 officers, seamen, cooks and teachers on board, plus 118 cadets and 3 television crews. Amongst the cadets are 2 young Australians, Hamish Mackey from Sydney and Andrew Koleski from Melbourne. They're guests of the Polish Merchant Marine Academy for the Dar Młodzieży before she sails, as flagship for the memorial ceremonies at Westerplatte, the place where World War II began. September 3rd, departure day. For families, friends and loved ones, this is farewell for 9 months. The European autumn, the winter and almost next year's spring will be over before their men are home again. Australia's ambassador was there to share the farewells.
Thank you very much.
Then it was cast off the lines and the epic voyage was underway. The route to Australia? Via Southampton, Tenerife, Rio de Janeiro, south around the Cape of Good Hope to Mauritius, arriving Fremantle on December 8th. The Dar Młodzieży is on her way, one of the largest, newest and most beautiful sailing ships afloat, heading for Australia to take part in the bicentennial Tall Ships event.
Embodying the outward-bound sail training philosophy, which is what this spectacle is all about. This is the flagship of the entire Tall Ships fleet, and one of the biggest. Tomorrow it will lead 23 tall ships into Fremantle Harbour for a 4-day stay. The Dar, as it's known, is carrying 113 sail trainees and is on its first voyage to the Southern Hemisphere since its launch 6 years ago.
Australia has had a crushing 9...
When the Channel 7 helicopter caught up with Dar Młodzieży, she was under full sail about 30 miles south of Rottnest Island. She was a picture of perfection as she pushed through the light seas at about 5 knots. Dar Młodzieży is a 3-masted, fully rigged ship from Poland, and although she looks like she's just sailed out of the history books, she is in fact just 6 years old. The 164 crew on board the Polish ship last saw land at Mauritius, and today they were very pleased to see us. And while we were taking these spectacular pictures, they were snapping their own memories for the people back home. She has weighed anchor in Gauge Roads tonight and will sail into Fremantle tomorrow morning with more than 20 other tall ships.
Spectacular. Early next year. This morning, thousands of spectators looked on as 20 sailing ships from around the world made a spectacular entry to Fremantle Harbour. They were led by the Polish flagship Dar Młodzieży, manned by more than 160 sail trainees. The fleet will remain in Fremantle for 4 days. It's scheduled to leave for Adelaide on Saturday. And that's all from the news desk for now. Kate Dunstan will have regular...
History was being made again off the port city with this international salute to Australia's bicentenary. A small fleet of the world's most gracious, most majestic ladies of the sea here to help celebrate a 200th birthday party. And once again, Fremantle was letting its hair down. The 16-storey high Polish vessel Dar Młodzieży led the fleet into its first Australian port. She alone carries a complement of 163 sailors, many of them teenagers. A number of tall ships will be sailing on to Hobart to take part in the Southern Hemisphere's first tall ship race, beginning in the Apple Isle and ending in Sydney on Australia Day. They once kept the new Australia in touch with the world. Today they're here to remind us of that bygone era. And it is perhaps significant that the tall ships and on Saturday the First Fleet reenactment vessels visit Western Australia first. After all, William Dampier discovered the West Coast 70 years before Cook charted the eastern states. In Fremantle, Brady Hall.
Some dressed for the occasion.
Oh, it's very exciting. It's a tremendous adventure.
The jewel in the fleet's crown is the majestic Polish square rigger, the Dar Młodzieży, meaning gift of youth and appropriate.
Sailing ships manoeuvre through the harbour. They were treated with awesome sights, as 8 of the 9 ships in the First Fleet reenactment sailed through the heads. However, the Bounty, the only exact replica in the fleet, was running late and missed the grand arrival, being held up by customs officers who had earlier found some cannabis on one of the First Fleet ships. The reenactment is a commercial venture. And in true commercial fashion, the unpaying had their view of the First Fleet blocked. The fleet has been at sea for 32 days, sailing from Mauritius. For an old salt and one of the sailors on the fleet, it was a time to think of days gone by.
The early sailors would have had it far more difficult than we did. We would have been basically in luxury compared to them, bearing in mind that they would have had to get to Sydney and they wouldn't have even known what they're going to. And they were 8 months at sea on square riggers, nowhere near the capacity of what these ships are in facilities. We went from Mauritius to Perth, where they went from Cape Town straight through to Sydney, and down in the Roaring Forties most of the
and a ship.
And down in the Roaring Forties most of the
and a ship out of the event. As well, the Prime Minister clashed with Aboriginal protesters.
It was the biggest task of all, getting 170 ships to sea without a traffic jam. As the Ecuadorian barque Guayas pulled out, disaster. Her yardarm snagged the rigging of the Dutch boat Abel Tasman.
We were all watching the leaving of the Guayas, who was moored behind us. And then, well, it's a pity. By leaving, she hit our ship quite strong. And that's why we have met some severe damages.
2 of her crew had to be fished from the water, and her boatswain was taken to hospital with broken ribs. Her crew say the mast has been bent, and they're unsure.
And after being sent on its way by the Prime Minister, the fleet was still making only slow progress tonight.
Tasmanian organisers say the tall ships have lured anything up to 500,000 people to Hobart's waterfront. And today, the biggest tourist of them all, Mr. Hawke, was visiting, appropriately, the American ship Eagle.
I'm certainly very, very pleased indeed to be able to participate.
It's an indicator of how much public interest there is in this event, and perhaps some votes on the side. But the Eagle was marking time to join the rest of the ships, which had already started a spectacular parade of sail down the Derwent River. Hobart came to a standstill to watch the big ships go, and despite light winds, no one was disappointed. On the Irish brigantine Asgard too, some confusion over what the national flag looks like. More than 170 boats saluted the Governor-General on HMAS Stalwart as they made their way down the river. The Ecuadorian barque Guayas had its sailors on every yardarm. By the time the Eagle was ready to leave, the wind had improved and the sails started to come out. When the race began, just after lunch, Storm Bay was producing just cat's paws of breeze, and the spectacular spread of canvas was getting the big ships nowhere fast. Poland's Dar Młodzieży won the race across the line, but within a few minutes she'd been passed by Spirit of New Zealand. But the big ships will probably finish well behind the Sydney to Hobart winning maxi yacht, Sovereign. Weather forecasters say the fleet looks like battling light headwinds for several days.
Hard on the heels of...
Today, ships have come. The Dar Młodzieży from the port of Gdansk in Poland. The US Coast Guard cadet training vessel, the Eagle, from her home port of New London in Connecticut. Actually, that was 4 months ago, back in September of last year. The Eagle, 295 feet long, or 90 metres, with a crew of more than 200, a magnificent sight. And of course, from the old London, ships of the First Fleet reenactment have journeyed to Australia and will join the bicentennial tall ships to recognise the 200 years since the first white settlers arrived. But whether they've come west about or east about, the common destination was Australia. On the west coast, the port of Fremantle at the mouth of the Swan. Actually, there wasn't much in the way of facilities at Fremantle until these jetties were constructed in the 1890s. But it was an emotional moment back in early December when the fleets arrived in the America's Cup port of Fremantle. And it was here that Australians got their first glimpses of the magnificent spectacle which lay ahead. The British settled Sullivan's Cove in Hobart in 1804. And by 1820, Hobart was well on the way towards becoming a leading port. This early film, with Salamanca Place and Battery Point on the right, shows how well situated the port of Hobart is. In the foreground, historic Constitution Dock, the home of the Sydney Hobart boats and one of the oldest docks in Australia. Well, this is how beautiful Hobart looks today, or rather how she looked last Sunday as the tall ships were welcomed to Hobart. Thousands of people, a great atmosphere in the Tasmanian capital, which is the centre of some of the most exciting scenery in Australia, enhanced even more with spectacular man-made beauty such as this.
The Class A1 is for square rig above 120 feet.
And that'll include all the really big, the Dar Młodzieży and all of those.
And the fore and aft rig vessels over 160 feet.
Yes.
And for Class A2 was for square rig below 120 feet. And the schooner, all the schooners below that length, and it comes down to the ocean racing yachts, and then the cruising type yachts.
Yes, I mean, I wonder if people do expect that they're going to see 160 tall ships, or what we call tall ships, because, of course, that isn't the case, is it?
No, they'll be split up into these different starting lines.
In fact, we've got, what, 4 or 5 of the really big ones?
Yes.
The one Sebastian Del Cano and the Eagle and the Dar Młodzieży and all of those, and then we come right down to some yachts of about 9-10 metres, don't we?
Yes, very small ones, small cruising boats, small ocean racing yachts.
Well, this is Tasmania, and what we're going to show you now is the brief area that we're looking at, and here's Storm Bay. These first lot of conditions are from winds basically kind of round about the southwest, I would think, and then they set in a second set of starting positions, and I suppose, Peter, you'd be guessing that these ones over on the eastern side, or more northeastern side of Storm Bay, are the more likely ones.
Yes, we're looking north at the top of the screen, and they've forecast a southeasterly. So the starting line should be from A2 to B4.
A2 to B4, right, that's on the right-hand diagram. Well, it is a sight and a half, isn't it? You can see through the slightly misty-looking view that we have all of this fantastic number of sails. I think perhaps the next one, in fact, we should go to is Peter G, who's in the Tasmanian Enterprise. Now, the Tasmanian Enterprise is a 70-foot trawler, and Peter, let's go and see what it looks like from your point of view.
Well, we're at the moment on the Tasmanian abalone boat, the Tasmanian Enterprise, pointing away from the line, and we've got the Hobart away to starboard of us. The Hobart is the anchored end of the line, the HMAS Hobart, and then down the other end of the line is the Canberra, and really I guess that looks like they're going to use the starting line between Cape Contrariety on the Tasmanian mainland, and if you drew a line from there down to Cape Queen Elizabeth on Bruny Island, that would give you an idea of the start line. And with me is Bill Krause, who took part in organising the Queensland end of the tall ships race when the tall ships were up there in Brisbane. Bill Krause, the director of the Queensland tall ships. A few more craft here for the start of the race, which is the reason they're in Australia.
That's right. In fact, it's quite spectacular. There must be some 400 to 500 vessels, I think, floating around here in the bay at the moment, waiting to watch the start of this, the first historical event of a tall ships race in the Southern Hemisphere.
Well, it looks at this stage as if the Asgard, the Dar Młodzieży, the Lewin are all just about across the line, I'd say.
Yes.
Here, Bill?
Yeah, I agree. Just to look at it now, it's hard to get the angle from where we are right at this point, but it's very, very close to being right across the line, and I couldn't imagine under these conditions that we're going to get a restart, so I think they'll let them go.
Well, what I think they said, Bill Krause, talking to Rowan Johnston the other day, was that if somebody did go across the line early, rather than a recall, there would be a penalty situation which would be discussed as appropriate by the relevant committee.
Yeah, I think that's the most gentlemanly way to do it, and I think all skippers would agree with that. But they're coming up now, and as we look at it now, there's the Dar Młodzieży. She's just coming around the stern of Hobart. The
Aquarius there.
The Aquarius is there. We have the Spirit of New Zealand just behind the Dar Młodzieży, and over the other side, the Shabbat Oman and the Eagle are all sort of in a line, which just put them just behind the starting line as we see it from here.
Yes, I would think so, Peter G. It looks to me as though you've got a whole bunch of ships there, all just to the left of the starting line. The nearest ship is the Canberra with the 02 on her bow. That's the ship I think the Prime Minister is in.
It's pretty gentle out here. It really, we're almost in the doldrums, I'd say. It's like the Sargasso Sea. It's hardly Storm Bay at the moment.
Yes, I must admit I was sure I saw a bit of wave, or a few waves there for a while, but it all seems to have disappeared and gone very quiet. And now we've got the situation that we've been kind of dreading, I suppose, Bill, where you've got all of these giants sitting there, Bill Krause, and really nowhere to go.
That's right, and it looks, even though they've got all their sail up, they're not moving very far at all at the moment. In fact, there's just some signal flags have just gone down on the Hobart. Obviously, that's a warning. The Yaz is moving along the line at the moment, and she's just about to make a turn towards it. So she's obviously they're away. The Dar Młodzieży seems to be moving quite well there now. She's I suspect there might be a little bit of engine power there. I wonder.
Up until 5 minutes before the start, they're allowed to
that's what the rules
use
are,
the
Peter.
engines.
Yes.
Yeah, but she certainly seems to be making more ground than she would under sail, though. Well,
Yes.
they are. The topsails seem to be full, but of course there's more air up top. Fairer winds the higher you go, but not that much fairer. Now the big foresail is starting to be unfurled on the Dar Młodzieży up here at the windward end of the line, which is right underneath the stern of the Hobart, 1.5 miles back down the line to the Canberra, which is the starting boat for the race. The Prime Minister there with Roth Swan, Rear Admiral, who is the man perhaps responsible for this event coming to Australia in our bicentennial year.
Yes, he's worked well to have this event, and he must be quite pleased to see it all happening the way it is now. But there's the new the Lewin 2 sitting over there. She's sort of missed the line now. She's back behind all the other vessels, but she's working her way around.
It sounds to me as though there's a fair degree of confusion out there. Can you give us a fairly definite opinion as to whether you think they had started or not?
No, I'd say no. It is real confusion out here.
Now this, I think, is what we were all a little bit concerned with. Peter Howes is looking very intently here at the picture, and I'd be interested to see what you can pick out. Peter, do you think they've crossed the line? Because I rather suspect that some of these ships look as though they're doing their version of coming about and going back.
I was just looking at Lewin at the angle we had. It looks as if she was going to run into the stern of the ship, the warship.
Yes,
just going to miss it.
We've got them. It looks as though quite a few of them are just kind of holding fire there, Peter. And of course, in about 13 or 14 minutes, we're due, I think, for the second class, Class B, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't even think that all the Class B entries are in the marshalling area at the moment, behind the line.
That's possible. I wonder if Linda Wayman has a good view. And Linda, can you throw some light on this situation?
And I suspect that they're actually, they'll have started. They're coming across the line. The Dar Młodzieży has all its sails up and she's underway.
And we're looking at the Aquarius W at the moment, and she seems to be making some kind of ground, but it certainly is a bit confusing, isn't it?
Well, it's only confusing because there's so much spectator craft around, and but the ships themselves seem to know what they're doing. They're all just heading for the starting line.
Aquarius W, Linda, from your vantage point, is she a little astern of the rest?
Not a long way. She is a little bit to leeward of the Spirit of New Zealand, which is right on the stern of the start boat.
Yes.
And the Lewin still has to come around underneath the stern. She obviously overshot the mark and has had to round the boat and come back again. Asgard 2 is tucked up underneath the Dar Młodzieży, and
yes, I think we can see her.
Is just a load of her.
Is there a problem, Linda, from your viewpoint, with the small craft? Are the spectator craft causing any difficulty, and is there a possibility of manoeuvring problems?
I don't think they're causing any difficulty. They just make it all look very confusing. These ships don't really change course very quickly, so the spectator craft is pretty safe, sitting as close as what they are to windward.
Peter Howes is watching very intently and doing a few plots here on his little chart, trying to work out what they're going to do. Peter, can you make sense of what we can see there?
They're close hauled on port tack, and they're heading southwest, from what I can work out.
And that's what we're rather...
Yeah,
so heading roughly slightly southwest,
so
yes.
they'll go as far as they want to and tack onto starboard,
yes.
which should lead them straight down Storm Bay towards Cape Rail.
Indeed, because the water is deep right up to North Bruny Island. If you can remember back to our map of the start, we had those cameras on the long island on the left. Well, the water is deep right up to that, and then they can come down in a southeasterly direction and hopefully clear Cape Rail.
Yes, and that will take them clear of Tasman Island. They can go straight to sea and head north once they get
Once they're out at sea, of course, there's no problem.
They'll be running free. Not very fast, but they'll be running free.
Any estimates, gentlemen, on the course, on the wind strength and its direction? Any variation there at all?
No, there's no variation at all in the wind. We're still coming from the southeast, and we're just getting our 5 knots, I think, at the moment. If we're lucky, it might even only be about 3 knots. But if they do get a few gusts up to 15, which is predicted, I think that'll give them a good hand to get them underway.
Okay, well, look, we've established that the Dar Młodzieży seem to get... any estimates, gentlemen, on the course, on the wind strength and its direction? Any variation there at all?
No, there's no variation at all in the wind. We're still coming from the southeast, and we're just getting our 5 knots, I think, at the moment. If we're lucky, it might even only be about 3 knots. But if they do get a few gusts up to 15, which is predicted, I think that'll give them a good hand to get them underway.
Okay, well, we've established that the Dar Młodzieży seem to get a pretty good go at the start. We might just have a look at that vessel, because she's got to be one of the very much pre-race favourites. The Dar Młodzieży is a maritime work of art, a 3-masted, fully rigged ship with square rig sails on all 3 masts covering a massive 3,000 square metres. In keeping with her proportions, she carries a big crew of 169, 90 of them trainees. The Dar Młodzieży is only 6 years old. She's the principal training ship of Poland's Merchant Navy School and was bought from public subscription. And that's where she gets her name, which translates as the gift of youth. On the sail from Melbourne to Hobart for the start of the race, the Dar Młodzieży swapped 5 of her trainees with 5 from the Young Endeavour. No doubt a magical experience for those 5 young people. Under full sail, she's probably the most spectacular of the fleet. And coming into port with sailors on all of her yardarms, she makes a stunning sight. As to how she'll go in the race to Sydney, her captain says simply and diplomatically, the sea is there not to divide people, but as a bridge. Well, there she is, live in Storm Bay, Tasmania, making very little way at all, I would say, Peter House.
Not very many knots.
Another yacht, or another ship, I should correct myself, which nobody's referred to or even considered as a contender, is, of course, the Eagle. Now, we're looking at her here. You can see the words Coast Guard very clearly written on her side. She has a crew of over 200. But let's look at a couple of, a little bit of background on the Eagle. The Eagle is one of the glamour ships of the fleet. She's not the biggest, but at 90 metres, she's one of them. She spreads an impressive sail area of just under 2,000 square metres, and she is tall. She's carrying 137 cadets, 24 of them women, 55 professional crewmen and 18 officers. The Eagle began her life in the German Navy, being built as a training ship in 1936. And she was taken over by the United States in 1946 as a war reparation. And these days, of course, she is a real prize. The Eagle's based at the American Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut, and when she left her base to come to Australia, she was given a real razzmatazz send-off with the Coast Guard band and the television journalist Walter Cronkite doing the farewells. Under a full suit, she spreads 10 square sails, 4 jibs, 6 staysails, a spanker and a gaff topsail. And during the month the Eagle's been in Australia, she's been one of the real celebrities of the fleet. The red, white and blue banding and the impressive gold figurehead set her apart as a magnificent example of the modern tall ship. And in the race, her captain says simply, the Eagle will be doing her best. Well, these are certainly not the best conditions for the Eagle. You can see there that there's hardly enough breeze to make her square sails. In fact, she hasn't even got them all out, Peter Howes. She's not got enough wind there to really fill her sails at all. Right, Linda Wayman up there in the ABC helicopter. We've got a magnificent view looking southeast, I think, here, down towards Cape Rowell and Tasman Island. And I wonder now, from your position, whether there is a clear leader and if you've got a smile on your face because it's Spirit of New Zealand.
Yes, well, as Peter and Bill were just saying, that Spirit of New Zealand is I think, in front in the sense that it's to windward of Dar Młodzieży. Aquarius, which is a schooner and is Class B, not a Class A vessel, is coming up behind. The Class A and Class B actually started together, and the Class C vessels, the two divisions, should both have started by now. The Division 1 without the spinnakers would have started, and Division 2, which will be using spinnakers if they get the opportunity, of course, will have started too now.
Yes, you're quite right, of course, about Class A and B, and that is the explanation for the Aquarius W. And I suppose, as you point out, that the others may well have started or perhaps be about to start. We'd be, of course, keeping an eye now for Sovereign with her distinctive red hull, and it'll be an interesting comparison to see just how well she does in these conditions compared with, say, your favourite there, the Spirit of New Zealand.
Press the button.
Obviously, Sovereign will power her way through. I don't really think that to compare two vessels is the two types of vessels is really fair, especially in these sort of conditions. And I don't really think it's the point of the exercise. The Class C vessels will just come trampling through pretty quickly, I think.
Let's just stick with Spirit of New Zealand, Linda Wayman's choice, for a minute, because she is one of there she is. She is one of the most interesting vessels. Here's a little bit of background on her. This is the ship now, and let's look back. The Spirit of New Zealand is a three-masted barkentine and one of the most attractive of all. What she lacks in size, she certainly can claim in aesthetic appeal. With a gross tonnage of 184 tonnes, she falls a long way behind the large ships of the fleet. She's carrying 48, almost all of whom are cadets. Still a new boat, she's only been in the water a year, the Spirit of New Zealand is her country's national entry in the race, but she's not a government ship. In fact, she's operated by the Auckland-based Spirit of Adventure Trust as a training ship for secondary students. Well, we're still looking for the Juan Sebastian Del Cano, and maybe let's have a look a little bit back and in a little bit of detail about this ship. Juan Sebastian Del Cano is the giant of the fleet. She's a four-masted barkentine with more than 28,000 square feet or 2,600 square metres of sail. She's not only the longest of the tall ships, but also the oldest. She's a matronly 61, but despite her age, she makes a comfortable home for 280 Spanish Navy seamen and cadets. In any language, she's a magnificent sight under sail. She's named after the famous Spanish navigator who sailed with Magellan on the first circumnavigation of the world. When Magellan died midway through the circumnavigation, Del Cano completed the voyage. This isn't the first time she's been to Australia. She was here in 1928, the year after her launching. In fact, there's something of an argument as to her rig. The purists disagree on whether she's a topsail schooner or a barkentine, but whichever it is, she's big. And to put her size into perspective, you're looking at 5 cricket pitches end to end to cover her length. And to reach her main top, it's a climb of 48 metres or 160 feet, and that's a long way up or down. She was actually designed in England, and even although she was built some time ago, her fittings are continually updated. As a training vessel, she carries the very latest in navigational aids and radio equipment. The Juan Sebastian Del Cano, and I'm just wondering, Peter Howes, what would you describe her? Would you call her a barkentine or certainly a very attractive ship? Let's have a look at her background. The young Endeavour is brand new. Her length is 44 metres, her sails 550 square metres. And some have the modern and decided, if untraditional, advantage of being self-furling. To the top of her mast, it's 34 metres, and her gross tonnage is 173 tonnes. The young Endeavour is Britain's bicentennial gift to Australia. The journey from England was her maiden voyage, and more than 7,000 young Australians applied for the 12 berths on offer. The young Endeavour can hoist 10 sails when fully rigged, and make up to 14 knots. Apparently, she has excellent handling characteristics, and she's expected to do pretty well on the run to Sydney. After the bicentennial activities, Young Endeavour will become Australia's official sail training ship and a lasting reminder of the country's maritime links with Britain. Yes, well, just a point before we leave the Young Endeavour, Peter Howes. I made reference there to the self-furling or the roller furling that she has, about 4 of them. I just wonder how efficient that is and whether it's quite the right northeasterly course up the coast towards the, up the Tasmanian coast towards the coast of New South Wales.
Virtually due north, about 10 degrees east of north.
That's right. So anything that's got a northerly slant to it is going to be no good to them at all. They'll have to head for Zealand.
That's right.
And of course, at the end of the line is Sydney. And on the 26th of January, Australia Day, there really is going to be a very special show taking place in Sydney with Australia Day coverage on at 7 o'clock in the morning from this beautiful city of Sydney and running all day from 7 o'clock through to 6:30 p.m. And it will include the parade of sail when all of the tall ships and the other ships arrive in Sydney. That'll be at 4 o'clock. And some highlights of some of the celebrations which will be taking place right throughout Australia, in fact in every capital. And of course the First Fleet reenactment will be arriving. When this picture of the new dock in Adelaide was taken in 1882, the port had become a thriving wool export centre.
The 8th off. Yes, that's right,
Midships. Starboard 10. Pull it. Slow ahead. Midship. Ile do przodu.
Jeszcze 10 metrów do przodu. Uwaga, na cześć witających hip-hip! Hip-hip! Hip-hip!
stójcie, bo to nic nie da.
Do burty niech się złożą.
I bliżej do burty, do liny sztormowej wszyscy. Pochylają się wszyscy do przodu, jedno dobre pociągnięcie i trzymamy.
Trochę się wyrówna, bo teraz na mocno... Przeczekamy, niech trochę przeleci. Cały czas luzujecie trochę, trzymajcie porządnie, bo cały czas jedzie ten szot.
Trzymać ten szot, bo on cały czas się luzuje.
No uwaga, weźmiemy teraz.
Pochylicie wszyscy. I hej! Raz! Trzymać, przełożyć ręce. Hej! Raz! Słabo! Mocniej musisz. Uwaga! Hej! Raz! Dobra, uwaga, będziemy mocowali! Teraz uwaga! Słuchajcie komend! Tam na końcówka już puści ten szot, tylko tu środek trzyma!
Delikatnie,
tam ci co nad budówką stoją, puszczą szot!
Delikatnie! Tu jak najwięcej!
Chodźcie tu więcej tutaj! Chodźcie tutaj! Uwaga, chodźcie tu więcej! Chodźcie ludzie, no chodźcie! Chodźcie tu!
Jeszcze raz odebrać!
No zgniecie może, ale nie ma wyboru. Bliżej! Przed polem więcej. Stoper założyć.
Jeszcze nie podbiorą teraz, pojechało.
Dobra. Uwaga, wszyscy jeszcze raz szarpną. Hej! Raz! Układa. Do burty!
Odpada szybciutko na pole.
Szybko teraz! Lejki luz! Lego lina! Dobrze, już będzie trzymała. Podajcie mu tę. Dobra, trzyma lina. Dobra, już trzyma. Można to szybko. Uwaga, bo następna zaraz przyjdzie. To co, puścicie? Trzeba tym palcem coś zrobić.
Co ty teraz robisz z palcem?
Trzeba założyć stopę, bo się urwie, przednie się urwie. Przynajmniej jakiś dodatkowy...
Trzeba coś jeszcze założyć.
Ja też.
Bo to jest kurwa, bo tu w tym miejscu może jedno czy coś, to jeszcze jakiś prefender założyć.
Z tamtej strony na hamę.
O kurwa mać.
Widziałem. Chyba, że kamera się...
Ale to jest dobra kąpiel. A ja. Paworki mi się zwinęły całkiem, kurwa. Zimna woda jak skurwysyn. Tak, nie, ale ciągnie się normalnie, się tak, aż czeka przygniat. Dobrze, mu się zegarek...
Koniec zabawy.
Pływalnia?
Ale fale to nie mają z 20... Ale rąbnęła mi tej ziemi. Ale było wszystko.
Co tam się dzieje? I na dół te spółka śledczy. Wiadrami do wykładowej! Podaj do wody. Ja się tu wjadę.
Ci chciał wieść, nie jest spoko. Janusz, zobacz, z tyłu za tobą but pływa. Z tyłu za tobą, patrz w dół. Biały but pływa. Od czasu do czasu.
Puste wiadro. Opa jest sam. Puste wiadro.
Dajcie, spokojnie bierzcie. Dobra, już za dużo wiadra, mało dajcie wiadro.
Dobra, dobrze. Tak jest. Dziękuję. Panom dziękuję. Ręki nie musi być. Krzysztof!
Poszła ta kamera. 7:15. Siódma 15 czasu statkowego. W Polsce 15 minut po południu. Jest w tej chwili w Polsce właśnie południe, a Dar Młodzieży mija horn.
Tak, za chwilę rzucimy buty kapitana Jacka Blake'a, kapitana Young Endeavoura, który prosił, aby te buty, gdy statek będzie w pobliżu hornu, wyrzucić.
Komendant i drugi oficer.
Przyniosą nam szczęście na pewno, tak dotychczas. Czesiu, ja lewy przez prawe.
Ja prawy przez lewe.
Pierwszy zaczynać.
Tak nie będzie widział.
Jeszcze raz. Możesz teraz zrobić komentarz. Czekaj, idź tak! Idź tak!
Just
prostu jak się bardziej zbliży, tego sfilmujemy. Sporo chętnych, żeby to zobaczyć. Każdy schowany pod daszkiem.
Filmujesz to?
Tak.
Ale on coś jakoś przekrzywiony ten.
O, kręcenie jest, tak?
Tak.
Ja wiem, ale on tak będzie zakrętować.
Panasonic. To tak jak... Ja nie wiem.
Statek ciągle jeszcze daleko. Jest taka mgła, że nawet zoom fiksuje. Stateczek coraz bliżej, ale jeszcze daleko. Pogoda fatalna.
Pogoda fatalna.
Ustawia się już bokiem.
A będzie też filmował?
Tak.
Czekamy jeszcze chwilę, potem znowu sfilmujemy. Zobaczcie, prawie nic nie widać.
No co ma robić?
Coraz bliżej. Żeby światło ciągle było, nie wiem czy...
Znasz ją?
Można podejść bliżej, bo tam deszcz pada.
Może to ten kolownik się zepsuł.
Tak. Pada coraz więcej.
Tutaj Miśku jak będzie, a to mi otworzysz.
Jeszcze mi tu wiatr wieje, no ludzie, pani
Wtedy, dwa razy.
Panie Zbyszku, trochę w prawo.
Przepraszam. Sorry. Dziękuję bardzo, Włodek. Panorama. Przejmę.
Widać Dar Młodzieży, widać. Jak smutno, naprawdę.
Ale tam ten podar zawiało.
Maluje, ale pięknie. Czy jest brzydszy jak hiszpański?
Zgrabniejszy jest.
Rufem ma trochę.
Ładniejszy jest.
Nie, rufem brzydszy. A obejdziesz? Nie obejdziesz, będzie masz szerokonego. Całego jakby. Cudownego.
Cały chodził, otwórz mi ten, taki zmokniemy. Tak, no to parasol. No sam ci pomagają. Misiunku, otworzyłeś już?
Bo
Pracuję.
filmujesz.
Teraz widzę z napisem doskonale. Aha, ja już na
Ciekawe, żebyś go obijał, jak on będzie stał pewnie przez. Teraz stał na to, nie?
Stał na dół?
No, jeśli zrobisz takiego celu.
Stań przede mną.
A tak tu może z tej strony lepiej, to też go na wprost powiem. Tu honor, nie?
On by jednak tak się odwracał.
Coraz bliżej, ale się znowu deszcz znowu.
Mi się zdaje, że on się pokaże.
Tak wygląda w całej klatce. Wszyscy zmarznięci, ubrani grubo. O, ktoś tam macha. Z tyłu jakieś turyści. Pasażerowie na gapę. Ładniejszy od Hiszpana jest. Ja się wywinęła. Dużo ładniejszy niż Hiszpan.
Pewnie, że ładniejszy, bo to jest nasz polski.
A ładniejsze te, ożaglowanie całe. No ale jest połowę mniejszy niestety.
Pan kapitan tu jak patrzy, czujnym okiem.
O, kolega operator tam widzę na pokładzie.
Kto to tak krzyczy hip hip? Hurra! 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 Hurra!
za chwilę stanie. Samotny Hiszpaniec. Taka fatalna pogoda, no ludzie kochani. To co, kupasz? Parasol przebiera. Chłopaki się szykują, prawdopodobnie trap spuszczą. No. Wczoraj jak byli ten Hiszpan przypłynął, to Maoryści przyszli go przywitać ze skóp. A dzisiaj coś nie na razie nie widać. Zoom szaleje. No za chwilę traps.
the coupe doing there?
to nie zleciał pewnie. A jeszcze nie ma, na razie pisze. Tylko na 2 osoby. Tego tam rozumiem, po maurysku gadam. Na pewno nie my, ani nie oni.
Czemu nie zrobić to wolniej?
Przepraszam, ale to jest konieczne.
we are afraid it won't be so nice as yours.
Tam gdzie jest chór, jedzie chór. Z nami razem. Tam gdzie jest chór, gdy nie ma dnia. Z nami razem, hej. Jest razem do Kalifornią. Tam złoty jest jak po złote znał dziurnicka Sacramento. Tam gdzie jest chór, gdzie śnieg jest chór. Z nami razem. Tam gdzie jest chór, gdzie nie ma dnia. Z nami razem, hej. Jest razem do Kalifornią. Tam złoty jest jak po złote znał dziurnicka Sacramento. Nadszedłem tam przez z nami razem. Stanley for the pistol. Z nami razem, hej. Jest razem do Kalifornią. Tam złoty jest jak po złote znał dziurnicka Sacramento. A podkład ma cygańca u mnie. Z nami razem. Ale go przeżyło się. Z nami razem, hej. Jest razem do Kalifornią. Tam złoty jest jak po złote znał dziurnicka Sacramento. Nie minie rok, nim poprzedzą. Z nami razem. Na nocy krótko wiedzie. Z nami razem, hej. Jest razem do Kalifornią. Tam złoty jest jak po złote znał dziurnicka Sacramento.
Wczoraj Hiszpan nie wiedział.
Nie pada teraz, jak tam parasol?
Wczoraj Hiszpan nie wiedział, jak się z nimi liczyć.
Niech żyją nam. 100 lat, niech żyją nam. Jeszcze raz, niech żyją nam. Niech żyją nam.
Będzie czwarty odpier.
Badanka wojenna. Kiedy tu nie pada?
Dzisiaj nie masz powietrza udziału, uważa, bo pogoda wczoraj była lepsza.
Skarga skłonna. Dzisiaj telewizji. Ładna tatusia. Tak szybko. Tak jest.
A dla pozostałych wszystkich statek będzie otwarty od 1 do 5. Pasek, te szyby są.
Dobra, rozumiemy po polsku.
Gwizdacz tam. To liczy, że wszystkie wróciły.
A dlaczego oni wchodzą jak od pierwszej statek otwarty?
Jejku.
Grupa muzyczna. Jacek, zajmij się tam.
Tak jest. Jest.
Chodź.
A może my też się zabierzemy?
Widać, ważne.